far, you've flown holding patterns at a VOR and an NDB. This time, let's hold at an intersection. Now, you'd think with all this holding practice, it must be something you'll do pretty often. And really, that's not true unless you happen to be flying an airliner. After all, 75% of all airline flights go into only 28 airports, and those 28 airports can get pretty jammed up. Because of limited runway space, airliners really do have to hold more often than we do. But the ability to fly a holding pattern is a skill that every instrument pilot, including you, needs to have in case you do fly into or near those busy airports. So let's say that today we're flying northbound on Victor 186 and we're about 10 miles south of Robin intersection when the controller says Cessna 359er Echo Sierra holds south of Robin intersection on Victor 186. Expect further clearance at 2200, time now 2115. Well, it looks like we're going to have to hold for about 45 minutes. Of course, the first question is, how do I get into that holding pattern? This is too good to believe. It looks to me like it'll be a direct entry. All I have to do is, when I get to Robin intersection, start a right turn and to enter a holding pattern. I know it's a right turn because right-hand turns are standard and the controller did not tell me to make left-hand turns. Now, Robin intersection is defined by the 336 radial of Pogey and the 083 radial of Oceanside. I'll go ahead and set everything up now. I already have Pogey VOR set in my number 1 nav and the Pogey 336 radial in my OBS. That's what I'm using to fly Victor 186. So I'll use my number 2 nav to identify the Oceanside 083 radial. First I'll tune it, then I'll identify it. That's Oceanside all right. Next I'll set 083 in my number 2 OBS. When I'm approaching that radial, the VOR indicator should show a from flag and the needle should point towards the station, which is, in this case, is off to my left. Now, I estimate that I'm about 3 minutes out from Robin now, so I'll start slowing to my holding speed. I'll use a speed to hold of about 75 knots. Okay, the needle on my number 2 VOR is starting to move now. Well, the needle's centered, so I'll start my turn outbound. Now, I had about 5 degrees of wind correction to the left when I was tracking on Victor 186, so I'll use about 10 degrees here on the outbound leg. That'll give me a heading of about 166. Okay, my wings are level now on the outbound leg, so I'll start my time. Well, there's 1 minute outbound, so I'll start my turn to inbound now. On the inbound leg, I'll use that same heading of 331 that I used when I was tracking the airway. And there's wings level, so I'll start timing the inbound leg. Okay, there's the number 2 needle coming in. And now it's centered. And that leg took just about 1 minute also. I'll start the turn outbound now. Okay, my wings are level on my outbound heading of 166, so I'll start my time for the outbound leg. My inbound leg worked out to be just about exactly 1 minute, So I don't need to make any correction to the outbound leg to ensure a 1-minute inbound leg.
Excuse me, Martha.
Yes, Cal?
This is boring. Let's just say you lost your number 2 radio.
Well, Cal, you sure know how to spice things up. I guess now I'll have to do all my navigating with the number 1 VOR. By the way, we're assuming for the time being that we don't have GPS. Okay, I'm now holding at an intersection with just 1 radio. And although this situation is famous for its difficulty, it's really no big deal. You just have to know how to hold a heading. And you learned that a long time ago. There's my 1-minute outbound. It's time to turn back inbound. Okay, my wings are level and I'm on my inbound heading of 331. So I'll start timing the inbound leg. Now, here's where holding your heading comes in. Everything is the same as normal, except that once I'm established on the inbound leg, I'll just hold that heading. Then, when I need to identify Robin intersection, I'll just switch my number 1 nav over to Oceanside and set my OBS to the Oceanside 083 radial. Okay, I've been about a half a minute inbound, and I'm established on my radial inbound. So now I'll tune in the Oceanside vortex, and I'll identify it. That's Oceanside, all right. I'll leave the audio for the number 1 nav in my earpiece to make sure I've tuned the right station when I'm switching back and forth. Now I'll set 083 on the OBS. Okay, the needle's centered, so I'm back at Robin intersection. And say, the time worked out to be just about 1 minute again. I'll start the outbound turn now. Well, my wings are level now on my outbound leg, so I'll start timing again. Notice I'm not in any rush to reset my number 1 nav back to the Pogie Vortac and the 336 radial. I won't need it again until I want to get established again on the inbound leg. I've got the entire outbound leg plus the turn to do it in. But I might as well go ahead and do it now. You know, once you get this all worked out, it's really pretty simple. Now, I've been double timing my number 1 nav just for the exercise. But if you have a GPS or DME, you can make things a lot simpler. You can just ask the controller if you can fly legs of a certain length instead of timing them. And you can ask for any length you want. Airliners are often given 10-mile legs. If you have an IFR certified GPS with a current database and the intersection you're holding at is in that database, you can just use the intersection as your reference point and fly, let's say, 3-mile legs out from that. So this time, instead of timing this leg, let's say we asked for and got permission to use 3-mile legs. If you don't have a GPS, but you do have a DME, you could just tune in the Pogie Vortac and use DME from it to determine your leg length. Notice that one-way Robin intersection is defined is by 36 DME from Pogie. So let's set the GPS to Pogie and use it as if it were a DME. We'll talk more about using the GPS later on, but here are the steps we need to use it for this purpose. First, I'll check to make sure that I'm getting good signals for navigation. This GPS gives me a message when I'm not. There's no message, so I'm okay. Then I'll use the Direct To feature and select the Pogie VOR. That's Papa Golf Yankee. And since we'll want to fly 3-mile legs, we'll start our turn back inbound when we're 33 miles from Pogie. There's 33 miles now, so we'll start our turn inbound. And here comes the inbound radial. Once we're established on it, all we have to do is wait until we're 36 miles from Pogie and start our turn back outbound. And there's 36 miles. Well, I think we have figured out how to hold at an intersection, whether we're doing it with 2 VORs, 1 VOR, or DME. So let's go catch up with John. He's on his way to Julian Vortak to fly a DME arc.